Part 1.
The rain hadn't stopped for hours. It was the kind of storm that made people stay home, pull out old blankets, and forget about the outside world. But for Noah Bennett, the storm meant something else. It meant work. Noah had been fixing cars behind his garage since sunrise, the roll-up door half open, water pooling at his boots. His shirt clung to him, drenched with sweat and mist. The air smelled like oil and rust, just the way he liked it. Or rather, the way he had convinced himself to like it over the last 10 years. He preferred the noise of engines over conversation, the weight of tools over the weight of small talk. In a town like Meriton, people noticed quietness. And in Noah's case, they respected it, if only because they didn't know what else to do with it. Noah wiped his hands on a rag and glanced at the old photo taped to the wall, faded, curling at the edges. It showed him standing in front of a burned-out building, holding a small girl in his arms. She was covered in soot, eyes wide, alive. He didn't look at the photo often, but on nights like this, when the thunder reminded him of sirens and smoke, it had a way of calling to him. That little girl had disappeared from his life as quickly as she'd entered it. He never knew her name, never even got a thank you. And that was fine. He hadn't saved her for thanks. Noah dropped the rag and pulled the garage door shut, locking it with a heavy chain. The wind had picked up, rattling the trees that lined the edge of his property. He stepped into his pickup and started driving toward the edge of town, the same routine every Friday night. Not for a drink, not for company,
Just coffee.
black, no sugar, no cream. The place was called Margot's Diner, a neon-lit time capsule that sat between a shuttered hardware store and an abandoned movie theater. Margot Jensen, the owner, always kept a booth open for Noah, and she never asked questions. As he pulled into the diner lot, headlights sliced through the downpour. Someone else had just arrived. Noah parked and walked in without checking who it was. The bell above the door jingled. The warmth hit him first, followed by the smell of grilled onions and coffee. Margot looked up from behind the counter and gave him a nod. "Booth's ready, sugar," she said, pouring his usual before he even sat down. Noah slid into the corner booth, rainwater dripping from his jacket. Then out of the corner of his eye, he saw her. A girl, maybe 21,
Soaked to the bone.
shivering, hair stuck to her face. She stood near the door like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to come in. She looked fragile, but not in a helpless way. Fragile, like someone who had carried too much and was about to drop it all. Margot waved her over. "Honey, sit down before you catch pneumonia. I'll get you some hot cocoa." The girl hesitated, then moved slowly to a booth across from Noah. Their eyes met for just a second. Hers lingered. Something passed through him. Recognition?
No.
That would be crazy. He hadn't seen her since that night. Margot placed a cup in front of her and leaned in. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Lena," the girl said, barely above a whisper. Noah turned his gaze back to the window. The storm had worsened. Thunder shook the glass. "Rough night to be out," Margot said to Lena. Lena nodded. "My bus broke down outside town. I was walking to the motel." "But you're staying at that rat hole?" Margot raised an eyebrow. "No offense, but I wouldn't let my dog sleep there." "You need a ride?" "I'll be fine," Lena said quickly. Noah didn't speak, but he listened. He hadn't realized he was staring until Lena looked back at him again. Their eyes locked. "Do I know you?" she asked softly. Noah's pulse quickened. He shook his head slowly. "I don't think so." But there was something in her voice, something that felt like a thread pulling at the seams of a memory he had long buried. Lena stood and walked over to his booth. "Sorry to bother you, but did you ever live in Brighton?" Noah stiffened. "Brighton? 10 years ago. The fire. The little girl." "No," he lied. She tilted her head, studying him. "You look like someone I once knew. Someone who helped me." He forced a polite smile. "Not me." Lena gave a soft laugh, more to herself than anyone else. "Guess I'm just chasing ghosts tonight." She turned to walk back, but Margot stopped her. "Listen, sugar, the weather's getting worse. If you need a safe place tonight, you can stay in the back room here. I've got blankets. It ain't much, but it's better than that motel." Lena hesitated. Noah watched the entire exchange without a word. Something twisted in his chest. Guilt? Fear? He reached into his coat pocket and slid a key across the table toward Lena. She froze. "My place is a block away," Noah said without looking up. "There's a spare room. You'll be safe." Margot raised her eyebrows but said nothing. Lena stared at the key, then at him. "Why would you offer that to a stranger?" she asked. Noah finally looked up. "Because 10 years ago, someone gave a stranger a second chance," he said. And in that moment, through the haze of time, storm, and silence, Lena Carter realized she wasn't chasing ghosts. She had found one. And this time, she wasn't going to let him disappear. The air inside Noah's house was dry and still, filled with the faint scent of engine grease and pine-scented cleaner. He hadn't had a guest in years, much less a stranger. But as Lena stepped inside, clutching the towel Margot had given her, she didn't feel like a stranger. Not exactly. Noah watched from the doorway, silent as ever, as she kicked off her soaked shoes and stepped carefully onto the hardwood. She was cautious, eyes scanning the living room like it might collapse under her. But she didn't seem afraid. "You can take the room on the left," he said, motioning down the short hall. "Bathroom's across from it." Lena nodded, still holding the towel like armor. "Thank you."
He didn't reply.
She stood there for a moment longer, then finally turned and disappeared down the hall. Noah exhaled slowly. The rain battered the windows, and the old house groaned as if waking from a long slumber. He walked into the kitchen, opened a cabinet, and stared at an untouched box of tea bags. After a moment, he grabbed 2 mugs and filled them with hot water. Minutes later, Lena returned, her wet clothes swapped for one of Noah's oversized sweatshirts. It hung off her shoulders like a blanket. "You didn't have to," she started. "I know," Noah interrupted, placing the mug in front of her. She took it with a quiet nod. They sat in the living room, 2 mismatched souls on opposite ends of the couch, steam curling between them. "I remember the fire," Lena said softly. "It was in Brighton. Apartment 2B. Noah looked up. She wasn't guessing. "I was 8. The fire started in the kitchen. My mom had left the stove on. We didn't have a working smoke detector." Her voice didn't shake. It was calm, measured, like she had practiced this for years. There were screams. I was stuck under the bed. I couldn't move.
The heat was so. She paused.
Then you came in. You picked me up, carried me out. I remember the way your hands shook. Noah stared into his mug. "I didn't stay long," he said. "Didn't want attention." "I know. The firefighters said you vanished before anyone could thank you." Lena leaned back, watching him closely. "Why?" He hesitated. Then, with the weariness of someone cracking open a locked door, he said, "Because I wasn't supposed to be there." Lena blinked. "What do you mean?" "I was running," Noah said quietly. "From a life I didn't want. From mistakes I couldn't fix. That night, I was sleeping in my truck down the street. Heard the alarms. I didn't think. I just ran." Silence filled the room. "I don't care why you were there," Lena whispered. "You saved my life." For a moment, the storm outside faded, the past melting into the quiet hum of now. "I looked for you," she said. "For years. I found your photo online, burned building, man holding a girl. No name. Just a local paper clipping. It took me forever to find someone who remembered the garage. Margot said you never talk about it." "I don't," Noah said. "Not because I regret it, but because it's the only thing I've ever done that mattered. And I didn't want the world to ruin it." Lena nodded slowly. "Well, too late. I found you." He almost smiled. "Almost." "I don't know why I'm here," she said after a while. "I just needed to see you, to say thank you. But now that I'm here, I realize it's more than that." Noah raised an eyebrow. She leaned forward. "I owe you. And not just for saving me, but because that night changed me, made me stronger." "Lena, you don't owe me anything." "But I do," she said firmly. "And I think you need saving too, whether you admit it or not." The wind howled against the house. Noah stood, walked to the window, and stared into the blackness beyond the glass. "You don't know me," he said. "Maybe not," she replied. "But I know what broken looks like." He turned, a flicker of something sharp in his eyes. "I'm not broken." Lena didn't flinch. "Then why did you lie about Brighton?" He didn't answer. The silence stretched.
Thick.
Uncomfortable. Then Noah said something she didn't expect. "Do you want to know what happened after that fire?" Lena nodded. "I left town. Took a job fixing motorcycles in Dallas. Stayed for a while. Tried to forget. But the nightmares followed. Every time I saw smoke, I heard you screaming. I didn't know your name. Didn't know if you made it. I told myself it didn't matter. But it did." His voice cracked slightly. "I moved here 5 years ago. Opened the garage. Told myself I'd never get involved in anyone's life again. But you offered me your house." He looked at her. "Didn't say I was good at keeping promises." Lena stood and walked to the kitchen, pulled out a notepad from her bag, and started writing. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Making a list." "Of what?" "Ways I'm going to return the favor." Noah blinked. "Lena, this isn't a debt." "It is to me." He watched her scribble. "Number 1, she said aloud. "Fix your porch light. It's been flickering since I walked in." He let out a small breath of laughter. "Number 2, teach me how to change a tire." Now he laughed, a real one.
Quick. Honest.
"I'm serious," she said. "You saved me when I was a child. Let me help you now that I'm grown." He looked at her, something shifting in his chest. A warmth he hadn't felt in a decade. Hope, maybe? Outside, the storm began to die down. Inside, 2 strangers, no longer strangers, sat in the glow of something unexpected. A second chance. And neither of them knew that fate wasn't done with them yet. Because 10 years ago, Noah saved her life. And now Lena Carter was about to save his, in the most unexpected way. The morning sunlight spilled into the kitchen like a quiet promise. Noah sat alone at the table, sipping his coffee with the same routine precision he'd followed for years. But this morning felt different. Across from him sat Lena, still wearing his oversized hoodie, her hair damp from a shower. She looked peaceful, like someone who hadn't slept so well in weeks. Noah wasn't used to this. Company, conversation, or the strange sensation of comfort that came with her presence. She looked up from her mug. "You have creaky floorboards in the hallway." He raised an eyebrow. "Welcome to old houses." "I like it," she said, smiling. "It feels lived in." He nodded, not knowing what to say next. Then she leaned forward and said something that made him stiffen. "I want to work at the garage." Noah set his mug down carefully. "You what?" "I want to work with you. Learn. Help." "You're not staying," he replied quickly, avoiding her gaze. "The storm's over. Roads are clearing." "I'm not staying forever," she clarified. "Just long enough to do what I came here for." "And what exactly is that?" She didn't flinch. "To make sure you don't disappear again." He stood and walked to the window, folding his arms across his chest. "You found me. You said thank you. That's enough." "It's not." "Why?" "Because people don't get second chances like this," she said. "You saved my life, Noah. And I've spent the last 10 years wondering who you were. Now I know. And you're not just some hero who vanished. You're a person. One who clearly hasn't let anyone in for a long time." He didn't answer. "You let me in," she said gently. "Even if you won't admit it." Noah exhaled slowly. "There's nothing to fix here, Lena. I'm not a broken story that needs a happy ending." "I never said you were," she replied. "But maybe I am. Maybe this isn't just about repaying a favor. Maybe it's about writing a new chapter for both of us." He turned around finally, his expression unreadable. "You really want to work in the garage?"
She grinned.
"I've changed my own oil before. Watched about 100 YouTube tutorials."
I'm scrappy.
"You'll ruin your nails." "Good. I hate them anyway." He chuckled just once. Quiet and genuine. That afternoon, Lena followed him to the garage. It was a modest shop on the edge of town, paint peeling from the door, tools arranged in obsessive order on pegboards. A sign above the front window read Bennett's Auto and Repair in faded lettering. "Wow," she said, stepping inside. "This smells like rubber and man pride." Noah smirked. "You'll get used to it." He handed her a spare uniform shirt. It hung like a tent on her, but she wore it with pride. Over the next few hours, Lena watched him work, changing brake pads, checking fluids, rotating tires. He didn't talk much, but she didn't need him to. She listened, asked smart questions, and by mid-afternoon, she'd gotten grease on her cheek and a smudge on her nose. "Am I official yet?" she asked, holding up a wrench. Noah looked at her and shrugged. "You're not fired. That's something." At closing time, a woman in her 60s walked in with a walker and a rattling old Buick. "Hey there, Ruth," Noah greeted, his tone softer than usual. Ruth smiled warmly at him, then looked at Lena. "Who's this pretty helper?" "New trainee," Noah said before Lena could speak. "She's still learning." "Well, maybe she can't fix engines yet, but she's sure fixed your mood," Ruth replied, giving Lena a wink. Lena laughed. "I'll take that as a compliment." After Ruth left, Noah leaned against the counter and looked at Lena for a long beat. "You want to come by tomorrow too?" Lena didn't even hesitate. "Absolutely." That night, they sat outside on the porch steps, watching the stars emerge behind drifting clouds. Lena broke the silence. "You ever think about going back?" "To where?" "Wherever you were running from." He looked up at the sky. "There's nothing there for me, just shadows." She nodded. "I know a bit about shadows. My mom never got clean after the fire. We moved from place to place. She blamed herself, and I think I blamed her too." He looked at her, surprised. "I got bounced through foster homes. Some good, some not. But I survived. I had to, because someone thought I was worth saving." The words hung between them like smoke. "I didn't know any of that," Noah said. "Didn't want to drop my trauma resume on day one," she replied with a faint smile. "Fair enough. But that's why I came. I'm not just here to repay a debt. I'm here because I've been trying to make sense of why I survived when so many others don't. And I think maybe it was to find you again." Noah didn't reply. Couldn't. He just looked at her, really looked, and saw not a girl he'd once carried through smoke and flame, but a woman forged from fire.
Strong. Brave.
And just as lost as he had once been. The stars blinked above. And somewhere deep inside Noah Bennett, a wall began to crack. Not crumble, just enough for light to peek through. But across town, someone else had taken notice of Lena's arrival. A man in a rusted red pickup parked outside the garage long after it had closed. He lit a cigarette with shaky fingers, watching the building like it owed him something. Then he pulled out a folder from his glove box. Inside, a photograph of Noah. And a copy of a fire report from Brighton. "Found you," he muttered. He crushed the cigarette beneath his heel and drove off into the dark.
Part 2.
The sharp crunch of tires over gravel stirred Noah from his shallow sleep. He blinked, groggy and disoriented. The bedroom clock read 4:42 a.m. A pale gray light hovered beyond the curtains, signaling the reluctant approach of dawn. He sat upright slowly, spine creaking from a night of restless tossing. His instincts were buzzing, a low hum in his chest he'd never been able to shake since his days in the firehouse. Something was wrong. Noah padded to the window, rubbing a hand over his face. Across the gravel lot, parked near the entrance to the auto shop, was a red pickup truck. It hadn't been there when he went to sleep. The truck looked old, the kind of rust-lined frame you'd find in a scrapyard or tucked behind someone's barn. But the engine was still ticking softly, metal cooling from a recent drive. He frowned. Who the hell would show up before sunrise in a town like this? Noah threw on his boots and a flannel, grabbed the flashlight from his nightstand, and made his way outside. The cold bit at his skin. Autumn had arrived quietly this year. No dramatic winds, just a steady, creeping chill that set into the bones. The truck's driver door was shut. No one was inside, but something was tucked under the windshield wiper. He approached cautiously, glancing around. Silence. He reached out and plucked the envelope free. It was manila.
Thin.
No markings on the outside. Inside was a single black and white photograph.
Old.
Slightly crinkled at the corners. He pulled it out slowly. It was him. No doubt about it. He was in uniform, helmet in hand, soot streaked across his face, smoke curling behind him like a ghost. It was from the day of the fire, the one that changed everything. But it wasn't just the photo that sent a chill down his spine. It was what was scribbled on the back, in hurried, uneven handwriting. You don't remember me, but I never forgot you. Wait for me. I'm coming. Noah felt the air leave his lungs. He turned and scanned the horizon. No one. Just the sound of birds beginning to stir and a train whistling somewhere far off in the valley. Back inside, he set the photo down on the kitchen table, poured himself a cup of coffee, and stared at the image like it might come alive. He remembered the fire. Vividly. The collapsed roof. The screams. The girl. She couldn't have been more than 12, maybe 13. Trapped under a beam in the back hallway. He'd carried her out with flames, licking the air around them. He never got her name. She was unconscious when he handed her over to the medics. And then life moved on. Or so he thought. Now she was reaching out? After 10 years? He spent the day restless. Couldn't focus. Maya noticed. She came by the shop late morning with a coffee and that easy half smile she always wore when she sensed something was off. You didn't return my text this morning, she said, leaning against the counter. Noah hesitated. Didn't sleep much. She studied him for a second, then her eyes shifted to the envelope sitting beside his wrench tray. That yours? He followed her gaze. Sort of. He told her everything. The truck. The note. The photo. She listened, lips pressed together in a tight line. You think it's her? She asked quietly. I don't know. Creepy way to make contact, don't you think? Noah nodded.
Yeah.
But I can't lie. It's rattling me. Maya picked up the photo, flipped it over, then stared at it for a long time. You were a hero, you know, she said, even if no one ever said it back then. He let out a dry laugh. Didn't feel like one afterward. She gave him a look. You saved someone. You risked your life. You gave that girl a second chance. That matters. He looked away. Maybe. They sat in silence for a while, until Maya finally nudged his arm. Want company tonight? He hesitated, then nodded. That night, she made pasta while he cleaned the shop. They talked about small things. Old classmates. Local gossip. But underneath it all, the tension simmered. That photo sat on the table like a ticking clock. By midnight, Maya had fallen asleep on the couch with her feet curled under a blanket. Noah sat in the armchair beside her, staring into the quiet. Rain had begun to tap lightly on the window. He watched it trail down in streaks, hypnotic and steady. Then, a knock at the door. His heart jumped.
Slow.
Measured. Another knock. He stood slowly, stepped over Maya gently, and approached the door. He opened it. No one was there. Just the sound of rain and the dark shape of the red truck, still parked across the lot. But something new was on the porch. A single white lily in a glass bottle. And another note. He picked it up with trembling hands. Not yet, but soon. He stared out into the night. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel alone. He felt watched. Not by a stranger, but by someone who remembered. That girl had come back. But why now?
What did she want?
And what did she mean by soon? The answers wouldn't come easy. But he had a feeling his quiet little life was about to change forever. Noah barely slept that night. Every creak of the house, every gust of wind brushing against the window pane felt like a signal. His thoughts kept circling back to that lily, left like an offering on his doorstep. And the second note. Not yet, but soon. What did it mean? The next morning brought no answers. Only more questions. Maya left before sunrise, tiptoeing out quietly, but not before leaving a sticky note on the fridge. You need sleep.
And peace.
Find both today. He appreciated her presence more than he could say. But peace? That felt far away. He kept the photo and both notes folded in the back pocket of his jeans as he walked the shop floor, tinkering with a carburetor that didn't need fixing. He couldn't sit still, couldn't focus. At noon, the bell above the shop door rang. Noah looked up from under the hood of a Chevy. It wasn't a customer. It was a stranger. A woman, maybe late 20s, stood in the doorway, rain on her jacket sleeves, eyes calm but intense. She wasn't from around here. He would have remembered that face. There was something about her presence, quiet, almost reverent, like someone walking into a church. "Can I help you?" he asked, wiping his hands on a rag. She stepped forward, a small, polite smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "You're Noah Walker, right?" He stiffened. "I am." She extended her hand. "My name is Celia." The name meant nothing to him. But her voice, there was something hauntingly familiar about it. "I think," she hesitated, voice soft, "I think you saved my life once." Noah froze. Time seemed to slow around him. The tools in his hand felt suddenly heavy. He stared at her, studying every feature, her green eyes, the faint scar above her brow, the way her fingers trembled just slightly as she lowered her hand. It clicked. The hallway, the flames, the little girl who'd barely been breathing when he found her. He whispered, "You're the girl from the fire." She nodded slowly, her eyes glassy. 10 years ago. I was 12. For a moment, neither of them said anything. The air between them buzzed with the weight of unspoken memory. He finally managed. "Why now?" Celia smiled faintly. "Because I finally found you." She told him her story. After the fire, she'd spent months in hospitals. Her family moved, new town, new name, new life. Her parents divorced shortly after, and she was raised mostly by her grandmother, who told her that a firefighter had pulled her from the wreckage like an angel. But no one ever told her his name. She only had a photograph. One her grandmother had clipped from a small-town newspaper. A grainy shot of a firefighter carrying a child through smoke. That same photo that ended up on Noah's windshield. "I held on to it all these years," she said. "Every time life got hard, I'd look at it and remind myself I wasn't supposed to survive. But I did. Because of you." Noah didn't know what to say. He'd buried that day under years of silence. He'd convinced himself it didn't matter. That heroism was just luck mixed with timing.
But here she was, alive, whole.
Grateful. "I didn't expect you to come back," he said quietly. She looked at him, something tender flickering in her expression. "I came back because I owe you everything." He shook his head. "You don't owe me anything." Her jaw tightened. "You don't know what you gave me." That afternoon, they sat in the diner at the end of Main Street. Celia ordered grilled cheese and tomato soup, the same meal her grandmother used to make for her during recovery. Noah sat across from her, still not quite believing it. Celia told him about her life since, how she went into social work, helping children in broken homes. How she dedicated her career to second chances because someone once gave her one. "You were the start of all of it," she said. "I came back because I think it's my turn now." He furrowed his brow. "Your turn?" Celia reached into her bag and placed a folded file on the table. Noah opened it slowly. Inside were court documents, photos, reports. At the top of the file was a name he hadn't heard in years. Jacob Ward. Noah's stomach sank. Ward was the man whose carelessness caused the fire that nearly killed Celia and cost Noah his career. The man had been renovating a building without permits, storing flammable materials near a furnace. He walked away with a fine while Noah walked away with permanent nerve damage and a discharge. Celia's voice dropped. "I found him. He's not just running illegal rentals anymore. He's expanded. He's doing the same thing in other towns, cutting corners, endangering people. One of his properties just went up last month in Denver. 2 injuries. One kid lost a leg." Noah clenched his jaw. "He destroyed lives," Celia whispered. "Yours."
Mine.
"And he's still out there." She looked him dead in the eye. "I want to take him down. Legally. With everything we've got. But I need help." I need your story. Noah stared at the file. For years, he'd tried to forget.
Tried to move on.
He rebuilt cars, not lives. He kept his head down, didn't speak of the fire, didn't ask why the world worked the way it did.
But now,
a girl he saved had returned with the strength to fight a man he couldn't touch back then, and she was asking him to stand beside her. He leaned back in the booth, exhaled slowly, and met her eyes. "All right," he said. "Let's finish what we started." The following morning, the sky hung low with clouds, casting a dull gray over the town. Noah stood at the edge of the auto shop parking lot, his eyes locked on the file Celia had given him the night before. Inside that file wasn't just a paper trail. It was a map of every building Jacob Ward had touched, every life he disrupted, every corner he'd cut. And now, they had a reason to chase him. Maya walked out holding 2 travel mugs of coffee. She handed one to Noah and raised an eyebrow. So, mystery woman shows up, drops a folder like she's in a spy movie, and now you're pacing like a storm's coming. Noah smirked faintly. That's pretty much what happened. She took a sip, then leaned on the hood of his truck. "You gonna tell me what's going on?" He hesitated. Part of him still didn't believe it himself. "She's the girl from the fire 10 years ago." Maya's eyes widened. "You're serious?" "She tracked me down. She's not a kid anymore. She's sharp, smart, and determined." He paused, staring down at the folder. "She wants to bring down the man who started that fire." Maya was quiet for a long beat. Then, without breaking eye contact, she asked, "Are you going to help her?" Noah looked away toward the distant hills. "I think I have to." The decision wasn't just about justice. It was about closure. Celia had spent years chasing a ghost. Now that ghost had a name, a face, and a long list of offenses. And Noah had something he hadn't in a decade: purpose. By noon, the 2 of them sat in Celia's rental car outside a city archive building.
The town.
He leaned back in the booth, exhaled slowly, and met her eyes. "All right," he said. "Let's finish what we started." The following morning, the sky hung low with clouds, casting a dull gray over the town. Noah stood at the edge of the auto shop parking lot, his eyes locked on the file Celia had given him the night before. Inside that file wasn't just a paper trail. It was a map of every building Jacob Ward had touched, every life he disrupted, every corner he'd cut. And now, they had a reason to chase him. Maya walked out holding 2 travel mugs of coffee. She handed one to Noah and raised an eyebrow. So, mystery woman shows up, drops a folder like she's in a spy movie, and now you're pacing like a storm's coming. Noah smirked faintly. That's pretty much what happened. She took a sip, then leaned on the hood of his truck. "You gonna tell me what's going on?" He hesitated. Part of him still didn't believe it himself. "She's the girl from the fire 10 years ago." Maya's eyes widened. "You're serious?" "She tracked me down. She's not a kid anymore. She's sharp, smart, and determined." He paused, staring down at the folder. "She wants to bring down the man who started that fire." Maya was quiet for a long beat. Then, without breaking eye contact, she asked, "Are you going to help her?" Noah looked away toward the distant hills. "I think I have to." The decision wasn't just about justice. It was about closure. Celia had spent years chasing a ghost. Now that ghost had a name, a face, and a long list of offenses. And Noah had something he hadn't in a decade: purpose. By noon, the 2 of them sat in Celia's rental car outside a city archive building.
The town.
Council had long buried Ward's violations under paperwork and bureaucracy, but Celia had a lead on where they could dig deeper. "Do you remember anything specific from that day?" she asked as they climbed the courthouse steps. "Yeah," Noah replied. "The smell."
She paused, confused.
"Burnt paint.
Gasoline.
And old dust. I remember thinking how quiet it was for a building on fire." Celia glanced over. "You didn't hesitate, did you?" Noah shrugged. "You don't have time to." Inside the building, they scoured municipal records, zoning violations, emergency call transcripts. And there it was, buried on microfilm, half legible. A letter dated 10 years ago from a building inspector warning Ward about illegal flammable storage. Never acted on. Never enforced. Noah's jaw tightened. "We can prove he knew," Celia whispered. This changes everything." They left with scanned copies, evidence in hand. But the real turning point came 2 hours later. Celia's phone buzzed. She answered quickly, pacing near the curb.
Hi, yes.
"This is Celia Morrison."
Yes.
"I sent a request for the emergency dispatch audio from the East Pine warehouse fire in 2015. You have it?" Her eyes met Noah's. "Email it to me, please." The audio came in as a compressed file. They opened it on Noah's laptop inside the truck. At first, it was chaos. Screams. Radio chatter. Then a voice.
Calm.
Controlled. Unit 4. Entering north stairwell. Heavy smoke. Possible victims on second floor. Stand by. It was Noah's voice. Celia's hand flew to her mouth. For 10 years, she'd imagined that moment. Now she could hear it. The moment he chose to go in. Then came static. A loud crackle. A dispatcher panicking. And finally, "I've got her. She's breathing. Get a stretcher to the rear alley." Noah closed the laptop. The truck was silent. Celia wiped a tear from her cheek. "You saved me." Noah looked straight ahead. "I tried." That night, they gathered everything they had, documents, the audio, photos, blueprints, even news articles, and laid them out in Maya's living room like a war board. Maya, now pulled fully into the mission, brought out her laptop and scanned in every piece. "We'll need to create a chain of evidence. Something the district attorney can't ignore." Celia nodded. "I've got connections in Denver. There's an investigative reporter who's been chasing Ward for years. We send him this, he'll run it." They worked into the night. It was strange, almost surreal, Noah thought, how this quiet life he'd carved for himself was now transforming into a battleground. And all because of one girl, now a woman, who'd come back to return the favor. At around 1 a.m., as Maya dozed on the couch and Celia pored over witness statements, Noah stood near the window. Rain began tapping lightly against the glass. He looked down at the old photo Celia had left on his doorstep days ago. The one of him carrying her through smoke. He turned it over. This time something caught his eye. Written in faint pencil on the back, like a child's handwriting. "If I live, I'll find you someday." He turned back to look at Celia. She sat under the lamp, hair pulled back, focused and fierce. She did find him, not just to say thank you, but to remind him who he used to be. Part 3. It was just after sunrise when the knock came at the door. 3 raps. Slow. Deliberate. Noah was the first to his feet, barely awake, still groggy from the night of planning. Celia had passed out at the kitchen table, a yellow highlighter still in her hand. Maya stirred on the couch as Noah moved to the door. He peeked through the blinds.
2 men.
Black suits. Government-looking. One had a leather folder. The other wore mirrored sunglasses, even though the sky was still pale with morning fog. Noah opened the door halfway. "Can I help you?" The man with the folder spoke. "Mr. Noah Bennett?" "Who's asking?" The man held out a card. It wasn't government. It was legal. Ruskin and Hall, attorneys at law. "We represent Mr. Jacob Ward." Noah's stomach dropped. The other man finally spoke. "We're here to issue a cease and desist. You're in possession of private documents and spreading potentially defamatory information about our client." Noah folded his arms. "And?" The lawyer's tone stayed calm, rehearsed. "And we're advising you to destroy any materials involving Mr. Ward. Failure to comply could result in civil action." Celia stepped up behind Noah, rubbing her eyes. She froze when she saw the card. "We've committed no defamation," she said firmly. "Everything we've found is public record. Or eyewitness account." The man in sunglasses smirked.
"Still.
Consider this your warning." He handed over an envelope. Noah didn't take it. Instead, he stared them down. "Tell Jacob Ward we don't scare easy." The 2 men exchanged glances, then turned without another word. The black car they came in peeled away down the gravel road, its tires spitting dust into the morning air. Inside, tension buzzed in the room like static. Celia threw the envelope on the table. He knows we're close. Maya looked between them. What if he tries something worse? He will, Noah said quietly.
And he did.
By noon, Celia's rental car was gone. She'd parked it in front of the diner 2 blocks down while they grabbed sandwiches, and when they came back, nothing. Just shattered glass on the curb and a faint trail of black rubber streaks. The police came, filled out a report, but it was clear from the start, they weren't in a hurry. One officer even asked Celia if she'd remembered to lock the doors. Back at the shop, Celia sat with her head in her hands. All our evidence, she muttered. All the files. Gone. Noah placed a hand on her shoulder. Not all of it. Maya backed everything up. Maya nodded from her laptop. Cloud storage. And a private server. You think I don't know how men like Ward work? Celia looked up. Her eyes were glassy but fierce. I'm not giving up. He can burn the whole town down if he wants, but I'm not letting him rewrite the truth. Noah leaned against the doorframe. Then we hit back. The 3 of them drove to a news station 2 counties over. A reporter named Eli Sanchez had run an expose on a crooked mayor 3 years earlier. Celia had seen the footage and reached out the night before. Eli met them in the parking lot, camera bag slung over his shoulder, flannel shirt rolled up to his elbows. I read your email, he said. And I don't scare easy either. They sat for 2 hours, recording interviews, scanning documents, walking through timelines. Celia shared her story first. Then Maya, from a bystander's view. Finally, Noah. When Eli turned off the camera, he said, "This is going to blow up. But you better be ready. Ward owns half the county and probably more of the cops." That night, the first wave hit. Local news picked up the teaser. Then online blogs. Then a small Denver podcast played a clip of Noah's 911 audio. Suddenly, the floodgates opened. A former contractor emailed Celia, claiming he'd been forced to falsify building permits. Then a janitor from the city office. She remembered Ward paying off a councilman to overlook inspections. The puzzle was filling in fast. But the victory didn't feel like relief.
Not yet.
Because the next morning, the threats began. Noah found a dead bird nailed to a shop door. Celia's motel room was ransacked. Nothing stolen, just tossed. And Maya's car was keyed on all sides. The word, liar, scraped deep into the paint. Still, they didn't stop. They couldn't. By now, people were listening. Whispers turned to phone calls. Phone calls to statements. And finally, a subpoena. The DA's office reached out. They wanted to meet. Noah sat in the passenger seat of Celia's borrowed truck, Maya driving, Celia up front, with the weight of 10 years hanging over him like a lead vest. I used to think about it all the time, he said suddenly. Celia turned. What? That fire.
That day.
Your face. He exhaled slowly. There were nights I thought maybe I imagined it. That maybe I didn't do enough. Maybe if I had gotten there faster. She touched his hand. You did everything. I'm alive because of you. Maya stayed quiet, eyes fixed on the road. Then she said, and now you're saving more than one life. You're burning down the right thing this time. They reached the courthouse just before sunset. The district attorney was younger than they expected, a woman named Rena Shaw, sharp and skeptical but interested. She sat across from them in a glass conference room and flipped through their file like it was a blueprint to a city she'd never seen before. I'll admit, she said, this is damning. But going after Jacob Ward is like suing a ghost. We're not suing, Celia said. We're exposing. DA Shaw raised an eyebrow. Even worse. Ghosts don't like spotlights. Noah leaned in. So, what do you need from us? She closed the folder gently.
Truth.
But airtight. If we do this, there's no going back. As they exited the building, the sun dipped low behind the skyline, bleeding orange and gold into the windows. The wind picked up, scattering leaves along the steps. And somewhere inside Noah's chest, something shifted. For the first time in 10 years, he didn't feel like a man haunted by the past. He felt like a man marching toward justice. The video dropped on a Tuesday morning. Eli Sanchez had stayed up all night editing the piece, slicing through hours of interviews and files until it pulsed like a heartbeat, truth wrapped in fire. The title read, "The Man Who Saved a Girl and Took on a Monster." And in the opening frame, Noah stood outside his auto shop, hands in his pockets, voice low and clear. "I didn't know who she was. I just knew she was trapped, and I couldn't walk away." The video exploded faster than any of them expected. By noon, it had over 100,000 views. By evening, it hit 500,000. And the comments, they came like a flood. "This man is a hero, and this town should be ashamed. Jacob Ward needs to rot. My uncle used to work for Ward. Said he was the devil with a smile. Where are the cops in all this?" Noah sat in the shop's back room, phone buzzing nonstop, watching the numbers rise. Maya peeked in, holding her laptop. BuzzFeed picked it up. "And a legal podcast out of New York just reached out to interview you." Celia was on the couch, fielding calls from 2 different local papers. Her voice was sharp, relentless, no longer trembling with fear but steel. But as the attention grew, so did the danger. That night, someone slashed all 4 tires on Noah's pickup. Then came the late-night phone calls, blocked numbers, heavy breathing, threats whispered like secrets in the dark. And worst of all, the note. It was taped to the shop's glass door the next morning, in red marker. "If you think you're the only one who can play with fire, think again." Still, they pressed on. Celia had a breakthrough that morning. She found old property records from 10 years ago, documents showing that Jacob Ward had purchased the very lot where the fire happened only 3 months before the incident. Even worse, the building had failed 3 fire inspections. Noah stared at the papers like they were an autopsy. "You're telling me he knew that place was a death trap?" Celia nodded. "And he never fixed a single violation." Maya leaned in. "That's not just corruption. That's negligence. Criminal negligence." They printed everything, backed it up in triplicate, and sent it straight to the district attorney. By the end of the week, the world knew Jacob Ward's name. CNN picked up the story. Then MSNBC. The headlines were brutal. Local tycoon accused of covering deadly fire. Small-town hero exposes billionaire's dark past. 10 years later, justice finally comes knocking. And just like that, the tides turned. People who had once whispered Jacob Ward's name in fear began speaking it aloud. One by one, former employees came forward. Contractors, assistants, even a former girlfriend. They all painted the same picture: a man who used money as a weapon, secrets as armor, and silence as a leash. But Jacob didn't go quietly. He held a press conference that Friday, white marble steps, blue suit, perfectly staged. He smiled into the cameras and called the allegations deeply disturbing lies from unstable individuals seeking attention. Then he looked directly into the lens and said, "I've never met Noah Bennett in my life." The next day, someone threw a brick through the window of the shop. Noah found it on the floor beside his desk, wrapped in duct tape. Inside the tape, a flash drive. Maya scanned it before plugging it in. It held a single video file. Black and white footage. 10 years old. Security cam quality. The interior of a building hallway. A girl, young, maybe 13, running. Smoke curling behind her.
She falls, coughs,
Screams. Then a man appears. Face blurred by the smoke. But the shape is clear. He grabs her, pulls her up, carries her toward the door. Celia's hand covered her mouth. "That's it," she whispered. "That's the night I nearly died." Maya zoomed in. There, just for a frame, the man's face tilts toward the camera. It's blurry,
faint,
but unmistakable.
Noah.
He watched the screen in silence, heart pounding. He hadn't known this footage even existed. Whoever sent it wanted him to remember, or warn him. Later that night, as they huddled in the back room, door locked, curtains drawn, Noah spoke up. "There's something I haven't told you. Celia turned. What is it? The night of the fire. I wasn't just passing by. I was following someone. Maya frowned. Who? Noah swallowed hard. Ward. I saw him leave the building 5 minutes before it went up. He had a gas can in his hand. The room went still. You never said that before, Celia whispered. I didn't think anyone would believe me, he said. I barely believed it myself. Celia stood up, pacing. If we can prove that it's arson, it's murder. Maya opened her laptop. We need to track that building's owner history. Security company. Maybe someone else has the rest of the footage. Outside, the wind howled against the walls. Inside, it felt like war was coming. The next morning brought news they didn't expect. Jacob Ward had been subpoenaed, and the DA was filing a motion to open a grand jury investigation.
It was real now.
The city had turned. People were protesting outside Ward's office. Local officials were calling for his resignation. Even the sheriff, who once ignored them, now requested a private meeting. And amid all of it, Noah felt something he hadn't felt in years.
Hope.
Not the fragile kind. The kind built on fire. The kind that says, even if the truth takes 10 years, it still burns. The courthouse smelled like dust and old fear. Noah had never set foot inside it before. Not as a plaintiff, not as a witness, and certainly not as the center of a case that now gripped the whole country. The grand jury hearings were closed to the public, but the press swarmed the building steps, calling his name like he was a celebrity. But this wasn't fame. It was war. And his name was the first one on the list of witnesses. Inside, the room felt colder than he expected. No cameras, no crowd. Just 12 faces. Ordinary citizens. Each one holding the power to decide whether Jacob Ward's sins would ever see the light of a courtroom. He sat, hands folded, trying to hide the way they shook. The prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named DA Lindsay Rourke, approached the bench with steady calm. Mr. Bennett, she began, please tell the jury why you're here. He breathed in slow, and then he told them everything. About the night 10 years ago, about the fire, about the girl, about the man in the suit walking away from a gas-lit door. He told them how he'd stayed silent, out of fear, out of shame, and how now, finally, he wasn't afraid anymore. When it was over, DA Rourke nodded. Thank you, Mr. Bennett. She turned to the jury. We have video evidence of Mr. Bennett rescuing Celia from that fire. And now we have motive. Jacob Ward purchased the building, ignored the inspections, evicted the tenants weeks before. The fire hurt no one, except the one girl he didn't know was inside.
Why?
Because a burned building meant insurance, and millions in profit. For 3 hours, the jury listened to stories of corruption, cover-ups, and calculated arson. Celia testified next. She'd worn a simple blue dress.
No makeup.
Just her voice. I remember the heat, she said softly. The smoke. I thought I was going to die. But someone pulled me out. That man is sitting right there. She pointed at Noah. And the man who put me in that danger. You all know his name. Meanwhile, outside the courthouse, Jacob Ward sat in a black Escalade, watching the TV screen mounted behind his driver's seat. He didn't blink once. He didn't need to. He'd been through worse. Bought worse. Silenced worse. Or so he thought. Because this time, the walls weren't closing in slowly. They were collapsing all at once. That night, as Maya, Noah, and Celia sat in the back of the auto shop, they received an unexpected email from a man named Luther Ray. He claimed to be a former fire marshal who had inspected the building 6 weeks before it burned. Attached to the email was a PDF report, signed and dated, clearly marking the property as unsafe. But here's the kicker. It was never filed. I gave this report to Jacob Ward's office, Luther wrote. 2 days later, I was offered a settlement to resign quietly for health reasons. They buried it, but I kept my copy. Maya stared at the screen. Do you realize what this is? Noah nodded. The smoking gun. They sent the file directly to Rourke's office. By morning, she had it printed, verified, and stacked on the jury's desk. With that, the tide became a tsunami. And Ward? He panicked. On day 3 of the hearing, Ward released a statement denying any knowledge of falsified reports or bribery. But it was too late. Whistleblowers were coming out of the woodwork. A former city clerk, a building permit inspector, even a staffer who once helped Ward shred documents in his own office. Everyone wanted immunity. Everyone wanted out before the ship sank. And the more they talked, the clearer it became. Jacob Ward hadn't just orchestrated a fire. He'd built an empire on silence, sealed with fear. On day 5, the jury reached a decision. They recommended a full indictment. Charges included criminal negligence, insurance fraud, conspiracy to destroy evidence, attempted manslaughter. The DA's office filed for Ward's arrest the same afternoon. But by the time police arrived at his estate, he was gone, disappeared. His private jet was missing, and so was $20 million from his Cayman account. Back in town, the news spread like wildfire. Some people celebrated, others shook their heads.
But Noah?
He felt cold, not because Ward had vanished, but because even with justice clawing its way into the light, evil still had legs, still had wings, and it could fly. That night, he stood outside the shop and watched the sun fall behind the horizon. The sky turned blood orange. Quiet. Celia stepped beside him, arms crossed. "You okay?" she asked. He nodded. "I should be, but it feels unfinished." She looked down. "He'll be caught. One day." Noah exhaled. "Yeah, maybe. But this mess? It started the moment I decided to walk into that fire." Celia looked at him. "And it saved me." Suddenly, Maya came rushing out of the shop with her phone raised. "You both need to see this." She hit play. It was a new video. From a burner account. Footage from a hotel in Dubai. A man in sunglasses, slipping into a limo. And his face, just barely visible, was Jacob Ward. Maya looked at them, jaw tight.
"He's alive."
"And running. But we're not done." Noah stared at the screen. Not with rage. Not with fear. But resolve. "If he thinks he can run from the truth," Noah muttered, "he doesn't know how far we're willing to go."
Part 4.
The manhunt began at dawn. Interpol confirmed Jacob Ward's private jet had landed in Dubai under a false registration, chartered by a shell company Ward had created a year ago. From there, he vanished again, leaving only a trail of burned identities and empty bank accounts. The media exploded. Real estate king becomes international fugitive. Jacob Ward's empire of ashes. Justice escapes on a jet. But for Noah, Maya, and Celia, it wasn't about headlines. It was personal. Back at the auto shop, Noah pored over maps and digital flight records while Maya worked with a digital forensics expert named Leo, an old college contact who owed her a favor. Celia contacted survivors from other fires, buildings owned by Ward that had mysteriously gone up in flames over the years. There were 5. 3 deaths, all swept under the rug. "He's done this before," she said. "We just never saw the pattern." Maya looked up from her screen. "If we can prove a link between these other incidents and Ward, this won't just be a manhunt. It'll be a global takedown." But it would take more than evidence. It would take bait. And Celia had a dangerous idea. 2 nights later, a video dropped online, posted by a verified whistleblower account. In it, Celia sat on a wooden chair, eyes steady, voice calm. "Jacob Ward tried to erase me," she began. "But I'm still here. And I'm not alone." She named the victims, showed photos of the buildings, the deaths, the payouts. "I survived because someone saved me. He didn't have to, but he did. And now, I'm returning the favor." She ended with one sentence. "Jacob, you can run, but I promise you will never hide from the truth." The video went viral in hours. 8 million views by sunrise. It caught the attention of international watchdogs, NGOs, and even a BBC journalist who had been investigating Ward's offshore holdings for over a year. But it did more than that. It rattled Ward. Because the next day, someone hacked into the auto shop's security system. Live footage flickered and died. Backup drives were wiped. And then, a single message appeared on the shop's front computer. Walk away. Or burn again. Noah stared at the screen. His jaw clenched. He's still playing games. Maya pulled the plug on the system. Let him. Every move he makes just leaves a trail. But Celia? She was already one step ahead. She contacted Leo again. This time, not just for digital help. She wanted tracking, location beacons, ghost surveillance, and Leo delivered. 3 days later, an alert came through. Ward's shell company had purchased a yacht moored off the coast of Sicily. It was flagged under a Brazilian registry, but satellite imaging showed something else. A man matching Ward's profile had been seen boarding. He hadn't disappeared. He was floating,
Hiding.
waiting. Maya called in every favor she had. Interpol agents in Palermo, a U.S. liaison working cybercrime in London, and finally, someone unexpected, Tom Reyes, a former U.S. Marshal-turned-private investigator who specialized in high-profile fugitives.
He wasn't cheap.
But he was effective. Tom met them in person 3 days later, in a quiet bar near the harbor in New York. He dropped a folder on the table.
Jacob Ward, he said.
Your guy likes the ocean. He flipped through photos. Yacht registered to a dummy corp. Last seen in Sicilian waters. Probably moving every few days. But here's the good news. He has to dock for fuel. And he's not good at staying invisible for long. Noah leaned in. You can find him. Tom smirked. I don't take jobs I can't finish. The plan was simple. Ward was arrogant. He liked power, comfort, control. So Tom baited him. Using Celia's video, he leaked a story to the European press, claiming Ward's location had been discovered, and Interpol was closing in fast. They made it look like a slip, a leaked memo, a fake photo, just enough truth to scare him.
And Ward?
He took the bait. 3 days later, his yacht docked in Malta under a false name. Tom was already waiting. He followed the staff, the grocery run, the supply boat, and when Ward finally stepped out, disguised in sunglasses and a baseball cap, it only took one photo, sent to local authorities, to seal his fate. By the time Ward realized what was happening, police had swarmed the dock. He ran, tried to board a speedboat, but Tom tackled him right there on the pier, face down, handcuffed.
Caught. The news broke worldwide.
Jacob Ward captured in Malta. Real estate fugitive apprehended after international chase. Celia Barnes' viral video credited in takedown. But none of those headlines captured what really mattered. Not to Noah, not to Maya, not to Celia. Because what really mattered was the look on Ward's face as he was escorted onto the plane back to the U.S.
Defeated.
No more suit. No more smug smile. Just a man with nowhere left to hide. Back in New York, the courtroom was packed for the first public arraignment. Cameras everywhere. Noah sat in the back row with Maya and Celia beside him. Ward walked in, chained and pale. And, for the first time in 10 years, Noah met his eyes without fear. The judge read the charges. Ward pleaded not guilty. A date was set. The trial of the decade was about to begin. And this time, it would be public. It would be loud. And it would be unforgiving. As the crowd poured out of the courtroom, Maya grabbed Noah's hand. We did it, she whispered. But Noah shook his head gently.
No. We started it.
The real fight begins now. The courthouse felt like a stage. Cameras lined the entrance. Reporters shouted questions no one would answer.
Protesters
waved signs demanding justice, while security formed a tight circle around the building, as if shielding it from the rage of a betrayed public. Inside, it was silent. Too silent. Because this wasn't just any trial. It was the trial of Jacob Ward, the man who once controlled skyscrapers with a signature and destroyed lives with a shrug. And today, his lies would be peeled away, layer by layer. Noah stood in the hallway outside the courtroom, adjusting the tie he rarely wore. His palms were damp, and his heart felt like it was drumming in his throat. Breathe, Maya said beside him. touching his arm. "You're not alone this time." He looked to his left. Celia stood in a black blazer, her face calm but unreadable. The fire hadn't left her, but now it burned with purpose. And when the bailiff opened the door, she walked in first. The gallery was full, every seat taken. Ward sat at the defense table with two high-priced lawyers, both stiff and polished. But the man between them, Jacob Ward, looked smaller than the monster Noah remembered. His hair had grayed, his suit didn't shine, and his eyes, they never looked up. The prosecution began with quiet thunder. An assistant U.S. attorney named Denise Powell took the floor. She was methodical, composed, and utterly merciless. She listed charges:
Fraud.
arson, conspiracy, attempted murder. And then she called her first witness, Noah King. The room held its breath as he approached the stand. Noah sat,
Swore in.
adjusted the microphone, and then he spoke. He told them about the fire, about that night, the explosion, the trap,
The choice.
and then how Celia had vanished, how he blamed himself, how he spent years rebuilding what Ward had destroyed. And then came the twist, how, 10 years later, she found him again and brought the truth with her. Denise leaned in. "Mr. King, in your opinion, did Jacob Ward know about the faulty gas lines in your building?" Noah didn't blink.
Yes.
He ordered the cover-up. He signed off on it to protect the sale. And did he ever contact you after the explosion?
No.
Did he ever acknowledge the deaths?
No.
Noah looked straight at Ward then. "But I remember everything he said to me that night. Every word." When Noah stepped down, the room felt like it had shifted. Ward stared ahead, unmoving. Next came Celia. She took the stand like someone reclaiming their name. She spoke of fear, of hiding, of the years she spent looking over her shoulder, thinking Ward would come for her again. And then, of how she watched the news 10 years later, saw Noah's face in a community spotlight article, and finally realized it was time.
Time to stop running.
Time to fight back. But the defense wasn't quiet for long. Ward's lead attorney, Gregory Malden, rose with a smug air. "Miss Barnes," he said smoothly, "you claim to have been in the building that night, but you were never found. No ID. No hospital report. Isn't it possible you fabricated your entire involvement?" Celia smiled coldly. "My name wasn't in the system because I was homeless. I was hiding from a different kind of monster, but I lived through that fire." Malden walked toward her. "Convenient. And yet, the only person who can place you at the scene is the man I'm here to protect," she interrupted. She looked at Noah, then the jury. "He saved me when he had no reason to. I owe him everything. And I won't let the man who burned us both walk free." Whispers rippled across the room. The judge banged the gavel. "Order." Malden sat down, visibly rattled. The trial stretched on for 5 days. More survivors were called. Paper trails were unearthed. Old emails. Secret payments. Property insurance hikes just weeks before each building burned. Ward's empire had been built not on steel and glass, but gasoline and silence. But it was day 6 when the final blow landed. Denise Powell walked to the bench with a new piece of evidence. A recorded phone call from Ward's former assistant, now under witness protection. In it, Ward was heard saying, "Just get it off the books. If it burns, it burns. That's the risk we take." The jury listened in frozen silence. When the audio ended, there was no applause, no shouting, just a heavy stillness, like justice itself had entered the room. Closing arguments came fast. Malden tried to spin a tale of overreach, coincidences, and circumstantial chaos. But Denise Powell's voice cut through like a razor. Jacob Ward saw lives as numbers, risks as expenses, people as disposable. She looked to the jury. Prove him wrong. Deliberations took less than 4 hours. The verdict?
Guilty.
On all counts. Gasps filled the courtroom. Ward didn't move, didn't speak, just stared at the table as if it could swallow him whole. The judge looked over his glasses. "Mr. Ward, you will remain in custody until sentencing." Bail denied. The gavel fell, and just like that, it was over. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed like lightning. Noah and Maya stood together on the steps. Celia stood just behind them, blinking into the sunlight like she hadn't seen it in years. Reporters surged forward. "What's next for you, Noah?" "Celia, do you feel vindicated? Was it worth it?" Noah raised a hand. He didn't shout. He just said, "We did this for the ones who didn't get a second chance. And now maybe someone else will." He turned and walked down the steps. Not into fame, not into money, but into peace. Finally. Later that night, they met at Maya's place. The windows were open. A quiet breeze moved through the curtains. Celia sat at the table with a cup of tea. "I still can't believe it," she whispered. 10 years. And it's done. Maya smiled softly.
No.
"It's just beginning." Celia looked at her. "How so?" Noah stepped into the room with a folder. He dropped it on the table. Inside were files. Names. Faces. Other victims of corporate crimes. Other silenced survivors. He looked at both of them. "You said it yourself. Ward wasn't the only one. There are more. And we have a voice now." Celia blinked. "You want to help them?" Maya grinned. "We will help them." And for the first time in her life, Celia felt something she hadn't in years. Purpose. Ward may have fallen, but the fire that started 10 years ago, now it was burning for good. The television screen flickered in the corner of a dim room. Muted, but the headline was loud enough to echo. Real estate tycoon Jacob Ward sentenced, 38 years in federal prison. Below the headline was a split screen. On one side, Ward being escorted out in handcuffs. On the other, a grainy courthouse photo of Noah, Maya, and Celia standing together, quiet but defiant. But the man watching wasn't interested in Ward. His eyes were locked on Celia. He leaned forward in the shadows, studying her face as if it had been carved from memory. A slow, crooked smile pulled across his lips. "So, she's back." Back in the city, Celia was still trying to figure out what normal even meant. She had an apartment now, just a one-bedroom near the edge of town, paid for with funds from a victim restitution program. She had furniture, a fridge with food, and windows that didn't shake in the wind. But she still slept with the light on. And every morning, she walked to the window and checked the street below, just in case. Some habits don't die easy. Noah dropped by that evening. He brought takeout and a thick folder full of notes, clippings, and names. "I've been looking into this," he said, spreading the papers across the kitchen table. "There's a list of developers connected to Ward's old business partner. Same playbook, unsafe buildings, insurance fraud, people getting hurt." Celia sat across from him. Her fingers touched the corner of a burned photograph, one from a case 3 years ago where a fire had destroyed low-income housing in another state. "No arrests?" she asked. Noah shook his head. "Not a single one." Maya joined them later, carrying a laptop and 2 cups of coffee. She was fully in now. The investigative journalist in her had been reignited, no longer chasing stories for clicks, but justice for those no one listened to. "We can do this," Maya said, eyes bright. "Create a platform. A safe one. People can submit anonymous tips, share their stories, evidence, whatever they have. We vet everything, build cases, and pass them on to the right people." Celia blinked. "You want to go after every corrupt developer in the country?" Noah smiled. "Not all at once. Just one fire at a time." They started small. Late nights. Early mornings. Digging through public records, reaching out to survivors, tracking ownership trails buried under shell companies. And slowly, it grew. They called it Ashline. A network. A mission. A promise. To hold the powerful accountable. To light the truth where lies had lived too long. But not everyone liked the light. It began with an envelope. No return address. Just a single photograph inside. Celia's apartment building. Taken from across the street. She stared at it for a long time before saying anything. When she finally showed it to Noah, he didn't say much either. He just nodded slowly, jaw tightening. Someone's watching. Then came the calls. Blocked numbers. No voice. Just silence. And once, breathing. Celia started locking her windows again. Maya ran virus scans on every device they had. And Noah, he started carrying again. A decision he hadn't made lightly. But they didn't stop. If anything, it pushed them harder. Because fear meant they were close. And close meant truth. One morning, a message arrived through Ashline's encrypted inbox. It was flagged as urgent. Attached was a name, Elliot Drake, and a whisper of something deeper than anything they'd seen before. Celia clicked open the file. Photos, reports, internal memos, and then a face. Her breath caught. Noah looked over her shoulder. Who is he? Celia stood slowly. Her hands trembled. He's the one who made me disappear. Years ago, after the fire, when she fled the hospital and started over with nothing, it wasn't just Ward she was running from. It was Elliot Drake, Ward's fixer,
Cleaner.
threat handler. He made things vanish. Evidence.
People.
Problems. Celia remembered his voice. Smooth.
Casual. Deadly.
He once stood outside the shelter she hid in and said, "Run if you want. Just remember."
I'm Foster.
If Elliot was back, they weren't just chasing justice anymore. They were being hunted. Maya called in a favor. An old college friend in cyberforensics tracked the metadata in the email. Whoever sent this was smart, he said over video. Bounced it through 5 countries, but the origin was local. Local? Maya asked. He nodded. Same city. Same district. Hell, maybe even your same coffee shop. Celia's eyes narrowed. He's playing a game. That night, Noah stayed at her apartment. He didn't say much. Just sat on the couch, scanning old documents, keeping an eye on the window. Around 2 a.m., Celia finally broke the silence. You ever wish you hadn't saved me? Noah looked up. What? She didn't meet his eyes. If you hadn't pulled me out, none of this would have followed you. Noah stood and crossed the room. He sat beside her. You're the best thing I've ever done, he said. Don't ever regret surviving. She looked at him. The space between them felt smaller than ever. And for just a second, it wasn't about fires or lies or the past. Just 2 people.
Alive.
Fighting. Together. The next day, Celia received another message. This time, no email. No digital trace. Just a note slid under her door. For words. We're not finished yet. And beneath it, a burnt matchstick. She turned to the window, but no one was there. Only the sound of the city. Indifferent and cold. But Celia wasn't the girl who used to run. She was the woman who came back.
And now, she was ready.
Ashline wasn't just a project anymore. It was a battleground. And Elliot Drake had just made his first move.
Part 5.
The burned matchstick sat on Celia's counter like it had a heartbeat. She couldn't stop looking at it. Not because of what it was, but what it meant. Elliot Drake wasn't just watching. He was warning. Noah stood across from her, phone pressed to his ear, pacing. We need eyes on that street.
Yeah.
Cameras. Unmarked. Today. He hung up and turned to Celia. I've got a guy who can help. Ex-military. Quiet.
Smart.
He owes me. Celia nodded slowly. And if cameras aren't enough? Noah met her eyes. Then I stopped being quiet. Meanwhile, Maya worked like her fingers were on fire. She dug deeper into Elliot Drake's history than anyone had dared to before. But what she found wasn't just dangerous. It was explosive. She gathered them that night in the apartment, laptop open, voice low. Okay, so, Drake isn't just a fixer. He used to be a federal asset. Celia's brows pulled tight. Asset? Like FBI? Worse, Maya said. Unofficial. Off-the-books kind of stuff. Black operations. He's been doing this since the 90s. Noah leaned in. And now he's freelancing for real estate criminals? Not just real estate, Maya said. Drake has connections to a string of fire incidents in 3 different states, all linked to property insurance scams. She clicked through a slideshow. Images of burnout buildings, news clippings, blurred faces. In 2 cases, the key witnesses disappeared before trial. In one, the entire case file vanished. Celia swallowed hard. And the people who tried to expose him? Maya paused, then said quietly, dead. 2 of them. One was ruled an accident, the other suicide. But both smelled wrong. Noah stood. We're dealing with more than a corrupt businessman. Drake is a professional ghostmaker. Exactly, Maya said. And if he surfaced now, it's not random. Celia's voice was steady. He wants to erase the last loose thread. Her. The next day, Celia received an unexpected call. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. There was silence for a moment. Then a voice. Not Elliot Drake's. Female.
Calm.
But shaken. Are you the one from Ashline? Celia's heart skipped.
Yes.
Who is this? A pause. Then, my name is Danny. I used to work for Elliot Drake. They arranged to meet in a public park. Celia and Noah arrived early, sat on a bench, watched every face that walked by. Then Danny, late 30s, hooded sweatshirt, sunglasses. But her hands trembled as she approached. She sat quickly, eyes darting. I don't have long, she whispered. He checks everything, tracks everything. Why are you talking to us? Noah asked. Because I'm tired of being scared, she said. I was his logistics person. I arranged travel, bank wires, documents. I know where the bodies are buried, metaphorically and literally. Celia leaned in. Why now? Danny looked at her. Because he asked me to find you. Celia froze. Danny continued.
Elite.
Told him I couldn't locate you. But I did. And when I saw your name attached to Ashline, I figured it was a sign. She handed Celia a flash drive. It's encrypted. But everything's there, payment records, burner phones, even a partial list of clients. Noah took it carefully. Can he trace this back to you? Danny smiled sadly. If he could, we wouldn't be having this conversation. She stood and walked away without another word. Celia sat still, stunned. She's risking her life, she whispered. Noah nodded. So are we. That night, Maya decrypted the drive. What they found was beyond anything they'd expected. Dozens of entries, client IDs, target locations, payout totals. One entry stopped them cold. Operation Ash, Warehouse 7, status, confirmed, $200,000. Noah frowned. That's the warehouse that burned down 2 months ago. Maya looked up. There were 2 homeless families squatting there. Both died. Celia stared at the screen. This wasn't just corruption. This was execution. Suddenly, the stakes felt higher. Ashline wasn't just uncovering scams anymore. They were pulling back the veil on a nationwide operation that turned people's lives into insurance chips. And now they were on the board. The flash drive gave them more than names. It gave them coordinates. One location stood out. A secure property outside the city. Fenced. Guarded. Drake's last known safe house. Noah wanted to go. Celia didn't like it. We don't have a warrant.
No backup.
What if it's a trap? Noah looked at her with steady eyes. It's always a trap. That doesn't mean we let it spring on someone else. He left that night with a concealed mic. Maya monitored from base. Celia stayed behind, restless, pacing, praying. Noah arrived at the compound an hour later.
Tallgata. Barbed wire.
Security cameras. But he found a blind spot and moved in.
Silent.
Focused. He slipped into the side structure. Cold concrete. The scent of oil and dust. Then he heard it. Footsteps. And a voice.
Familiar.
Too familiar. Should have known you'd come, Noah. Noah turned slowly.
And saw him.
Elliot Drake. Older.
But the same calculating eyes.
Same snake-like smirk. He stepped forward slowly. I figured she'd send you. Always the hero, huh? Noah didn't flinch. You think you're still invisible? Drake chuckled. Not invisible. Just untouchable. Then, movement behind Noah.
2 men.
Quiet.
Armed.
He'd been lured. Back at the apartment, Maya's screen went dead. Noah's feed is offline, she said. Celia stood, heart racing. Then we go get him. Maya hesitated. Celia, if Drake is there, then I'm ending this. Tonight. They grabbed everything, hard drives, copies of the flash drive, USBs with evidence, and drove fast, headlights carving the night. The safe house loomed in the distance like a silent monster. They parked a quarter-mile out and moved on foot. Celia's hands trembled as she approached the outer fence. But she wasn't the same girl from the flames. She was a survivor. And now, someone else needed saving. Noah stood on the edge of the stage, the hum of murmuring voices echoing off the walls of the town hall. The evening had drawn a larger crowd than expected, neighbors, old colleagues, and a few people from neighboring towns. Some knew him personally, others only knew the story. Or rather, the version of the story that had quietly spread. Behind him, a banner stretched across the back wall, community recognition for life-saving service. But Noah wasn't there for applause. He was there because Maya asked him to be, and because something inside him told him this was the full-circle moment he hadn't realized he needed. He adjusted the sleeves of his press shirt. He didn't own many formal clothes. This was borrowed from the church's donation bin, ironed clean by Miss Teresa herself. Joanna stood beside the podium, her clipboard clutched to her chest. She looked every bit the organized volunteer, but her eyes, those watchful, thoughtful eyes, kept darting toward Noah with a look he hadn't seen in years. It wasn't pity, it was pride. She gave him a nod. He stepped up. The lights overhead warmed his skin, and the microphone whined before it settled. He looked out into the crowd, unsure where to begin. But before he could speak, Maya emerged from the audience, walking up with a small piece of paper in her hands. Noah stepped back, confused. She leaned in and whispered, "You saved me. Now let me speak first." The crowd stilled. Maya turned to face them. "I was 8 years old when I nearly drowned in a frozen lake," she said, voice trembling but clear. "I don't remember all of it. I remember cold, and screaming, and sinking." She paused, her gaze sweeping across the room. "But I remember a man who didn't hesitate, who broke through the ice, who carried me back, who disappeared before anyone could say, 'Thank you.'" Whispers rippled across the crowd. "That man," she said, turning toward Noah, "was standing in front of you. His name is Noah Hayes, and I owe him my life." The room went silent, a reverent silence. Noah looked down, jaw tight. His hands gripped the sides of the podium. His heart was pounding so hard, he swore the mic might pick it up. "She's lying," someone muttered in the crowd. It came from the back, a gruff voice. Noah raised his head. Maya did too. The man stepped forward, balding, broad-shouldered, his jacket still bearing the old firehouse emblem. It was Rick Barner, one of Noah's former crew members. "She's lying," Rick said again. Noah didn't disappear. He was suspended. For insubordination. For disobeying orders during that ice rescue. The crowd gasped. Maya stood frozen. Noah's face remained neutral. But his eyes, they burned. "Rick," Noah said, voice even. "You want to talk about what really happened that night?" The room was a powder keg. Everyone leaning in. Everyone waiting. Rick smirked. "You were told to wait. Protocol said the ice wasn't stable. We had divers on the way. You went in anyway." "And I pulled her out alive," Noah replied sharply, "while you stood on the shoreline yelling at me to follow procedure." Rick scoffed. "And you almost got both of you killed. We had procedures for a reason." Joanna stepped forward. "Enough." She wasn't loud, but the room hushed. She walked between them. "What matters is what happened," she said. "Not what it cost. What it meant." Rick turned away, muttering something under his breath. Maya gently stepped back up beside Noah, lifting the mic again. "That man didn't follow protocol," she said. "He followed instinct. And it gave me a second chance at life." Tears threatened her voice. She turned to him. "And this past year, I got to give that back. Because when I found him, when I saw what life had done to him, I knew I couldn't walk away." The crowd watched in stillness. Maya reached into her pocket and pulled out a small piece of laminated paper. She held it up. It was Noah's badge, the one he'd tossed into the river years ago. "I found it." The crowd gasped again. Noah's lips parted, stunned. "I dove into that same river. Took me hours. But I found it." She placed it in his hand. "Because what you did wasn't a mistake. It was heroic. And people deserve to know." Applause erupted. Tears fell freely from more than one face. Even Rick, arms crossed in the back, didn't move. Noah looked at the badge in his hand.
Worn.
Bent. But real. His past. His purpose. And maybe now his redemption. He stepped up to the mic, his voice low. "I didn't save her for thanks," he said. "I didn't do it to be remembered." He looked toward Maya. "But what she gave me, this second chance, it means more than a medal ever could." Joanna stepped forward and wrapped an arm around both of them. The applause grew louder. And through the warmth, through the forgiveness and truth, something shifted in Noah. Something long buried. Hope. The kind that didn't shout. It whispered. And it said, "You're still worthy." 3 months had passed since that night at the town hall. And for the first time in 10 years, Noah Hayes didn't wake up feeling like a ghost. He sat on the edge of his neatly made bed, lacing up worn boots that hadn't seen purpose in a long time. The small apartment above the bakery still smelled like cinnamon from the ovens below, and sunlit streaks cut through the sheer curtains. He hadn't just found a roof. He'd found rhythm. And the world had finally stopped looking at him like a cautionary tale. Downstairs, Maya was already up, elbows deep in flour, smudges on her cheek, and a soft hum in her throat as she kneaded dough like it was therapy. Noah stepped into the warm kitchen, eyeing the mess. "You do realize you have flour in your hair again, right?" Maya looked up with a grin. "That's how you know the recipe's right." He chuckled, reaching for a cup of coffee she'd already poured for him. "That's not how recipes work. For me it is." The playful banter had become their morning ritual, one he hadn't known he needed until he had it. She had offered him the apartment, a part-time job managing deliveries, and, without saying it out loud, a quiet promise that she wasn't going anywhere. He hadn't touched alcohol since that night. Hadn't missed it either. One day at a time. Later that afternoon, he found himself standing at the gates of the local fire academy. The brass plate on the wall caught the sunlight. To serve, even when it hurts. A man named Officer Jenkins, broad-shouldered and straight-backed, approached with a clipboard. "You sure about this, Hayes?" Noah nodded. "Not trying to be a firefighter again. I just want to teach. Safety. Search and rescue. Maybe CPR for the community." Jenkins gave him a long look. "A lot of folks still remember what happened." "I know. You'll have to earn their trust." "I intend to." Jenkins stared another moment, then extended his hand. "Orientation's next week. Let's see what you've got." As their hands met, Noah felt it, the weight of the past loosening. The future no longer looked like a locked door. That weekend, the bakery hosted something special. Joanna had arranged it. She'd started calling it the Quiet Heroes Project, a community event to highlight unsung acts of bravery. And the very first featured story was his. Photos of that icy rescue, the newspaper clippings, and even a short video interview with Maya played on a loop in the corner of the bakery. People came and went, some shaking Noah's hand, some just offering a nod of respect. For the first time, he didn't feel like he had to explain himself.
He just belonged.
As the day wore on, Maya pulled Noah aside. "I got something for you," she said. He raised a brow. "Another cinnamon roll? Because I already had 3, and I'm not proud." She rolled her eyes and handed him a small box. "Open it."
He did.
Inside was a key and a single photograph. His mother. Young, smiling, holding a baby wrapped in a blue blanket. Noah went still. "I tracked down your aunt," Maya said softly. "She had this. She said your mom always carried it in her wallet." His throat tightened. "I thought maybe you'd want to remember the good parts," she said, "before the world changed." Noah sat down slowly, the photo in his hand trembling. For years, he'd only held onto the last memory of his mother, cold, angry, broken. But this was different. He looked up at Maya. "You're the best thing that's ever happened to me," he said, voice low. She smiled. "Technically, you happened to me first."
He laughed.
A deep, real one. The key? It opened a room behind the bakery, one Maya had secretly been renovating. New floors, a small desk, a wall lined with first aid kits, maps, even a projector. She'd been planning to turn it into a community safety center. Now, it had a sign above the door. The Hayes Room, for the ones who never gave up. Tears welled in his eyes.
He didn't speak. Didn't need to.
Maya wrapped her arms around him from the side, and for a long, quiet minute, neither said a word. That night, the stars came out early. The bakery was closed, but the lights in the window flickered like fireflies. Maya sat outside on the back steps, sipping tea. Noah joined her, bringing a blanket. "You ever think," he asked, settling beside her, "that some moments are too perfect?" She leaned into his shoulder. "That's how you know they're real." Silence hung between them, comforting, honest. Noah finally whispered, "You could have walked away."
"When you found me."
"I wasn't exactly worthy." Maya looked up at him. "You gave a little girl a future. I just returned the favor." He kissed the top of her head. And for the first time in a decade, he knew he was home.